There's so many people that are coming, like they mentioned it first or that mentioned it first. And I never said that I coined the word per se, because I did about 3 album cover designs with the word salsa. And Eddie Palmieri did it with Alegre Records. There's a tune that he does mentioning salsa. But what my claim to fame, quote unquote, is really that I started to promote the concept of calling New York's Latin music with the name salsa. And it was something that was rejected by all the major, very serious and most, the greatest names in salsa. For example, Tito Puente. I'll give you a bit of a history of how it then went around the world, how the international press became aware of the word and how they came to New York to find out about it. But anyway, once I gave this international press the names of Puente, Machito, etc., Puente's favorite quote was, "I'm not a cook, I'm a musician." Mm-hmm. And Machito's thing was, well, this is the same music that I've been playing for 40 years, and they don't even play it well. So, but what? And then there was articles coming out of Cuba saying that salsa was a conspiracy by the New York record labels to negate credit to Cuban music. And that was so far-fetched, because it was this jerk over here that was doing this, and there's no way that the Latin labels could get together on anything. So imagine a conspiracy. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous.
I see.
Yeah.
And that's true.
The only 2 people in the industry that believed in the concept of selling this music and with the to a broader audience with the name salsa was promoter Ralph Mercado, may he rest in peace, and Jerry Masucci, the president of Fania Records. And Jerry put money, where his mouth was, and he did the great things with the Fania All-Stars, and then we traveled around the world. And Ralph Mercado, with his salsa festivals, established New York as the salsa capital of the world. Mm-hmm. But if you talk to people in Puerto Rico, they think it's Puerto Rican. But the truth of the matter is that it is a Cuban music which was modernized and accelerated in New York, and the primary audience and the primary creators were Puerto Ricans. So we embraced this music. And actually, let me tell you how this really started, because I consider Tito Puente the father of New York's Latin music. He came back from Cuba and completely modernized it, with his mambo, and he completely modernized it and gave it a stronger upbeat, right? Mm-hmm. And he modernized it with his compositions and his arrangements. Now, when you get to the Fania All-Stars, that's in your face. Cuban music, with the clave, back, 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 back. It's more laid back. And so, you also think of the charangas, wonderful music, but it was much more laid back. You understand?
Sure.
And then with the influence of the energy of New York and the influence of jazz, then it became an in-your-face urban music. And I don't care who debates it, etc. But you have to remember that by and large, this music wasn't played and was rejected by Cubans stateside, because it was considered música negroide. That means negroid music. Mm-hmm. Okay? And in fact, Desi Arnaz's father or grandfather, I think it was his father, he actually banned the playing of conga drums in his town. He was a mayor. Okay?
Oh, really?
And at one point, the black musicians, when they did play the percussion, they played it behind a curtain.
Oh, wow.
See, so you didn't know that, you see, and what African Americans don't realize is that the Caribbean maintained their African culture. The white slave owner in America completely wiped out his culture and gave him Jesus, but the Spanish slave owners, they didn't care what the heck they did as long as they worked. So when you get So they maintained the African culture. They the music, or the conga drum, which to me is the symbol of Latin music as we know it. And so what happened is that these Africans came to the Caribbean. Now this is weather which was similar to the African weather, and so but they didn't have lions to eat them up, so they were very comfortable creating their skin on wood conga drums. And the rhythms out of the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico are much more simplistic than those Afro-Cubans from the mountains of Cuba, because it was the most sophisticated drummers from the Yoruba tribes are the ones that went to Cuba for some damn reason. So that's why their beat and this music is much harder to dance to. But once you learn the beat, and I teach Salsa 101, which is finding the beat as opposed to doing all these fancy steps and spins, because once you can get that, you can dance to anything. I mean, I was at a place one time where they were playing this, in a Greek place, and I started dancing, like Zorba the Greek, and they thought I was Greek. Because once you understand the rhythm, there isn't a damn thing that you can't dance to. Oh, wait a minute. There's one more thing that I wanted to talk
Go ahead.
to African Americans. So they didn't realize that the Caribbean maintained that part of the African culture. Now, so the black man, and some people have said, don't stereotype. The truth of the matter is, it's in the blood. They have rhythm. Once they picked up the white man's instrument, they created jazz, which is considered an original American art form. It was really the African Americans, okay, from slavehood on. So it wasn't until Dizzy Gillespie, the great jazz man, when he got together with Chano Pozo, that was a black, as the ace of spades, ebony, and with his conga, they created Latin jazz. And that was the first time that African Americans were really exposed to a conga drum.
Sure.
Today, there isn't a rock group, there isn't a soul group that doesn't use a conga drum. You know what it is? I am a multimedia artist. And in an interview one time, I described myself as a brush, and the world was my canvas. But you have to understand, at the time, first of all, I'm a lunatic, and my greatest hero in the whole wide world is Salvador Dali, the great surrealistic painting, Spanish and self-promoter and a nut job, and so and some of my greatest album cover designs, you see the surrealism, you see the symbolism that I put out, because my quest was to give Latino image quality and a positive imagery. But anyway, Salvador Dali, one of his great quotes that I adhere to myself is, "La diferencia entre un loco y yo es que yo no estoy loco," which translated means the difference between me and a crazy person is that I'm not insane.
Exactly.
So in other words, intellectually, you do a lot of crazy stuff. But anyway, it was a time when I opened doors. There was nobody that was doing radio commercials. I started doing radio commercials. There was nobody that was actually designing Latin music album covers. I started designing record album covers, starting with Alegre Records. Then I started designing posters for the dances and then concerts. And you got to remember that at that time, the dances or the posters were done by the guys that made boxing posters, and it was what they call letterpress. So, of course, they were just not designed. They were just some pictures with a person's name underneath. Some of my greatest stuff was done for Ray Barretto. For example, the first one, Power. And then I borrowed stuff from, for example, this is a floating head in the air, right? And there's a stairway with a little guy looking up at this gigantic thing. And in Barretto's hair are his band members. And the name of the album is Power. So this I borrowed from Samson, from the Bible, right? Because Samson's strength was in his hair. Okay? And then one of the most symbolic ones that I did was Que Viva la Música. And this one has Ray Barretto coming out of a conga drum, again, which to me is symbolic of Latin music. The conga drum is chained to a landscape of New York, right, and it has a huge lock on it. And Barretto's hand is extended. You don't see his face from behind. His hand extends upward to the sky, and there's a big giant hand there of power. And on top of that hand is a key. So what he is grasping for is power and the key to unlock the chains that have this music chained. I've experienced two cycles in my life. When we went to Africa, we went at the Palace. There was a group there that was playing Johnny Pacheco's music. All the guys, they had a big, incredible jam session. You see, so when I came back and I wrote the article in Latin New York, I said that we made the full cycle, a circle or cycle. The rhythms from Africa to the Caribbean to New York, and all of a sudden now we're back in Africa and they're playing music that's being created in New York that has this African influence. Now the next cycle was, I started to tell you what the event that ignited the salsa explosion, the worldwide salsa explosion, was the Latin New York Music Awards that I put together in 1975. Now, this event created more, it attained more interest from the American press than had ever been given any Latino event. Now, take in mind that, and here's the reason why so much misinformation is coming out of Spanish articles and Spanish books, is because the Spanish media completely ignored what was happening with these new generation of English-speaking Puerto Ricans, okay? And there was a cultural renaissance in every area, from poetry, theater, fashion, every lifestyles. And so we got incredible coverage from the American media, okay? And it wasn't so much because a bunch of spics were honoring their own, but it was because in my editorials I was attacking an American institution, which is the Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, that gives out the Grammys, and for 17 years they had refused or ignored giving Latin music its own category. So as a consequence, once this hit the New York Times, forget all of the, and I'm talking about all of the local newspapers, but once it hit the New York Times and Time Magazine and Newsweek, the whole world all of a sudden came to New York. Journalists and TV cameras from all over the world, they came to New York to find out what was salsa. Okay, so and of course they went away realizing that this was an urban, highly energetic, rhythmic music. So that was the first phase in spreading this worldwide, and then, as a consequence of this interest, the Fania All-Stars started traveling around the world. Now, the next cycle that I'm talking about is this. And now, so very early in the 70s, this non-Latino, not a normal promoter, local promoter, decided he was going to put a concert in Madison Square Garden. Now, everybody in the industry, this was their opinion. Latinos are not going to sit still to watch our musicians play this music, because this is a dance music, and it's for dancing. So the only person in the industry, because again, I love to say this about myself, but it's true, I was a visionary, and I've proven that, it's been proven. Okay. I said, blacks are going to Madison Square Garden to see their acts. White kids, of course, are going to see their rock groups. Latinos will go because we were into an area of political awareness and wanting to be seen, to be present, presente, that kind of thing. And sure enough, he was very successful. Then came the Ralph Mercados and the Jerry Masucci's and everything else, and then, oh yeah, really? So then that's when also this music became a concert venue as well. But you got to remember, the New York musicians, they were terribly dressed. They didn't have choreography. They were not really that interesting to watch to begin with. So it was and that's the reason why I was so outstanding in all of that, because I dressed crazy, you know, with satin suits with, you know, different colors and stuff. And so then Jerry then started trying to dress the guys up, trying to do something. But the point is that it was all about dance. So now you hit 1975. Now this thing starts to spread. Now it goes into the 80s and 90s. And what's happening today, that salsa is all about the dance scene. Now, when you consider that in Asian countries, music and dancing was theater. You did not have a man and a woman dancing together, or a guy and a girl dancing together, okay? There was no such thing. And these people are now, in hundreds of thousands, are taking dance lessons, and there are Latin clubs throughout Europe and Asia, okay? So, but it's about dance. So they're having a damn clue on who these musicians are. Now, I have, as an MC, I've you know, I brought on a dance group or a couple, and they're dancing, but they don't know who these people are. So I don't know, one particular time I said, you know who you're dancing to? No. I said, it's Angel Canales. You ever hear of Angel Canales? No. So you hear a tune, they do a routine around it, but they haven't a clue. So there are some people who are interested in letting this audience know a little bit more, and that's when they hire me, okay? Which I do a presentation to give them some kind of background, and with slides and with video, and I demonstrate some dance, and so I give an hour show to try and educate people a little bit. Not that they're ever going to get into it. So the people, for example, that go to my website, salsamagazine.com, or who are big fans of mine, are really hardcore salseros. And by and large, it's a group that is aging, but there's also a lot of young people that are starting to get into it. But these are the hardcore, and there's nobody that's more hardcore than the people from Colombia. And I have a group of people now that have piggybacked off my fame and now have quadrupled it with the presence on the internet through Facebook and YouTube and all of that, way beyond my technical abilities. And what's happening is now we have to start going bilingual, because I knew I had some kind of a fan base in South America, but now the response in Spanish, especially from South America, is just incredible.
I see.
And it's because those people, especially Colombia, they know everything. I mean, they knew every album cover I designed. I first found that out when I traveled with the guys, and they would, a regular sideman trumpet player would say, these people, they know every album that I've recorded.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's how knowledgeable they are. And once your name travels a few thousand miles, you become bigger than what you really are. So don't ever believe your PR. That's one thing. Some people think they're a lot greater than they really are. But anyway, but these people, they read liner notes. They read anything that they can get a hold of. They were really into the music, even more so than New Yorkers who took this for granted. Yes, they also called me the Puerto Rican Toulouse-Lautrec. Now, that's something that not everybody knows. Toulouse-Lautrec was the artist who is better known for his posters of the Moulin Rouge than he was for his paintings. He's a little guy. He was a dwarf, and that was in the late 1800s, part of the Impressionists. Well, the correlation between Toulouse-Lautrec and me was because Toulouse-Lautrec, his posters were advertising a subculture of Paris, which is the Moulin Rouge. And my posters were advertising a subculture of New York, which was the whole salsa scene. And the other similarity is that we were both hand separating and hand lettering these posters. So in other words, each color is a different layer that we had to do separately.
Oh,
so
I
it's
see.
not like with Photoshop today and doing it on a computer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why some of my biggest fans for my artwork are computer graphic artists who, once they realize that this stuff was hand done, they go, wow, how did you do that? Well, you see, the young lords at least created some kind of political awareness, and they were influenced by the Black Panthers, okay? And two of the biggest voices there happened to be Puerto Ricans that were more black. You know, they were more African oriented, or they had. So a lot of them were really kind of black first, and then said, hey, you know, let me jump on the bandwagon with this Latin thing. But they did create a political awareness. However, they were naive in the sense that and they had a lot of followers about the independence of Puerto Rico. Where I broke with them is I believe, like the Jews, you gotta educate yourself. You have to become an integral part of society, so that no matter what color you are, in other words, if you're sick, man, you don't care what this guy's nationality is, if he's going to cure you. You know, you don't care what nationality this guy is if he's going to save you money on your taxes. You don't care what nationality this guy is if he's going to be able to represent you in court. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure, absolutely.
And what really upset me was that these people who were talking about Puerto Rican, que viva Puerto Rico libre, they didn't even speak Spanish, bro. And when they went to Puerto Rico, they were considered Yankees. You know, ustedes no son puertorriqueños, ustedes son de los Nueva York. So, you know what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
So, and I used to say, well, if you really are a Puerto Rican independentista, well, damn it, go to Puerto Rico and fight for it over there.
Ooh, well,
See,
exactly.
I was born in Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico, like with so many of us, it suddenly became like something to be proud of, and that was the most important thing, to be proud of being Latino and not having a complex, you know? I mean, I wrote an article called The Rainbow People. Are we mutts, or are we, wait, what the heck was it I used? Thoroughbreds? Are we thoroughbreds, or are we mutts? So it depends how you look at yourself. If you're not a pure, then you're a mutt. But let's look at it this way. We're a damn thoroughbred because we got the best of all worlds. There's Indian in us, there's white in us, and there's African in us. And that makes us superior, because if the world ever learned to live in peace and harmony, the whole damn world is going to look like Puerto Ricans. How's that? See? So that was, and those are the kind of editorials that I would instill in my people. I mean, I wasn't about Puerto Rican independence because I didn't know anything about Puerto Rico, man. I grew up in New York. The problems were in New York. And the Chicanos in L.A., they were fighting the cops and having their asses busted, okay, but to get jobs for Chicanos in the movie industry. And I'm not talking about even being actors. I'm talking about, you know, just being behind the camera in some capacity, okay? To be able to get them into the unions, to be able to, you know, it took a long time, but now you look at any film and you'll see Hispanic names doing, you know, whatever, you know, in the background. So that's what I was about. How do we make our conditions better in the United States of America where we live, especially in New York? And Ramon Vélez, a politician that a lot of people thought he was, you know, was crooked or something, he said something to me that was very profound. He said, you must control the institutions that control your lives. So if you have no New York cops, if you have no New York, you know, if you don't have any Latino cops and Latino firemen and Latino garbage men and Latino teachers and Latino anything else, we ain't going anywhere, bro. Because here's another editorial that I wrote about. I said, you know, kings, the biggest mafia people, they love their children, okay? And so they want the best for their children. Do you think that they want their children to be serving Puerto Ricans? No. All right? So therefore, you got to understand that they're looking out for their kids first. So therefore, you got to realize that nobody is going to do it for you. And that was and the attitude of a lot of Latinos, okay, that was, that old I bendito thing, like depending on the government to do bull. You can't depend on these people to do things that are good by you. So it's only the very, very liberal, the nice people that want to help you a little bit, but that's bullshit. Excuse my expression.
Ooh.
The truth of the matter is that you have to bootstrap yourself, brother. And that is the greatest contribution that I've made to my culture, I think, is the people that I touched and who have come back to me and said, Izzy, because of you, I went back to school. Because of your editorials, this. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you saw all these white revolutionaries. They eventually, their parents had money, etc. They finished their college, and eventually they became, at the very least, semi-capitalists. Sometimes you are so involved in your environment that you don't see things from another perspective. And I always took a bird's eye view of things. So along comes Ruben Blades out of Panama, and he sees this scene, and he writes El Número 6, which is about a subway. No one thought about writing a song about a subway, So some of the things that I used to try to tell these musicians, I said, you have to stop singing about El Bohío. El Bohío is like a shack, in the Caribbean or something. I think something like that.
It is.
And singing the same thing, Baila mi mami, guaguanco. It's the same crap. You're not saying anything. And Ruben Blades all of a sudden started coming up with social lyrics that penetrated South America.
Okay. Wow.
You see, so that's what I don't see. I don't see. Now, I give you an example. I mean, one day I started listening to Pete Conde Rodriguez, and he had a song called La Abolición, and I never really realized what that word meant in Spanish, and it's abolition.
Sure.
And it's about a black guy, and that abolition came, in other words, the freedom for slaves came, but he never got to enjoy it. Llegó la abolición y el negro no la gozó, y el negro no la gozó, So so very heavy. Joe Feliciano sang about Anacaona, which is a Taino princess, if I'm not mistaken. So at least those were very relevant, interesting lyrics. Other than let's dance and get together and let's have sex. I'll tell you something else though too. You got to remember the traditionalists. Okay, they were against bastardizing the music, and so like Latin rock or something like that, completely out of tune with that. But something that's also very popular around the world right now is a boogaloo, and it's because it's English lyrics. And the boogaloo did not die; it was killed. It was murdered very purposely. It was a conspiracy to make sure that this particular booking agent's bands played, and so they could get the boogaloo bands cheap, but in order to buy a band, you had to get this other artist, and so then there was a conspiracy where they paid off the two major DJs that were playing music to this new generation, and so then it became more typical. And then Pacheco had a great influence because he was completely typical. He's probably the only guy that I know of that did not record boogaloo, because they all eventually fell to the boogaloo, and so he had great influence in the beginning of Fania, and so the sound became more typical and more pure, as opposed to the boogaloo, which was a bastardization. But these are urban young Puerto Ricans growing up side by side with African Americans and listening to black stations, the popular music of the time, and it was natural that they would be influenced by that. So this was Latin soul. Boogaloo was Latin soul, but that's what it was. So a guy like Joe Bataan is traveling around the world. I just want to say something. One more little thing. I guess I have to pat myself on the back. The truth of the matter is that I am an interesting person to listen to, because I have a variety of stuff that is not just in one particular direction, that a lot of people are just self-centered in that area. And I hope that people will accept it that way, because I try to be as interesting as possible, even though, it's a long interview. But I hope that I have imparted some interesting information. And, well, you can tell them how to get back to me, but email me at salsaizzy@gmail.com. Go to my website at salsamagazine.com. Visit me on Facebook and YouTube. And I have this group that is now creating what we hope to have the biggest salsa network worldwide.